Guillermo, the Virgin's arriving soon.
They should be any minute now, Master. Fingers crossed.
All right, folks, this episode of America's Hometown Horror is brought to you yet again by Shine Through Window Cleaning.
Yet again.
Shine Through Window Cleaning is a family-owned and operated company that proudly serves America's hometown and the surrounding area. They treat your home or business like they would treat their own, and they truly believe in building their reputation on every job they do. Get in touch with Shine Through today to discuss your window cleaning, gutter cleaning, and power washing needs at 781-812-9189. That's 781-812-9189 or at shinethroughwindowcleaning.com. That's shine, T-H-R-U, window cleaning, shine through window cleaning. And if you want total domination and cleaning of your windows, I suggest you call Shine Through today, Guillermo. What is up? What is up? What is up? What's going on, folks? My name is Mike. Thanks for tuning into another episode of America's Hometown Horror. We are happy to have you back. Normally, at this point, I would say that I am happy to be joined by my esteemed co-hosts, plural, but we're missing one of them tonight, so it's just Kat and I. Kat, what's going on?
Just the two of us.
Just the two of us, baby. What's up with you?
Not much. What's up with you?
Not a whole lot. Ready to talk some what we do in the shadows, have a little bit of fun. Obviously, Andrew has been away in Myrtle Beach, so we wanted to get another episode recorded while he was away, just in case anything funny were to happen upon his return. But we'll be looking forward to having Andrew back on our next episode after this. But Kat and I are flying solo tonight.
Yeah,
been a little bit of time since we did this. I'm trying to think of the most recent episode where we did.
I forget the last one we did. We did one, just the two of us, but I don't remember which.
Oh, we've done a few that have just been the two of us, but I can't remember the last time that we did. It's been a little while, but yeah. So there'll probably be fewer burps, fewer outrageous interruptions, fewer pornographic references without Andrew here. So if you're into the show for that type of thing, I'm sorry to say you might be a little disappointed tonight, but we do miss Andrew, and we'll have him back shortly. So with that being said, obviously we have a TV show to talk about tonight, which is I can't remember the last time we covered a TV show either. Probably Hannibal. I know we covered Hannibal. We covered The Outsider. So. A little bit different tonight, mixing it up from a movie and doing a TV show. I know, big digression.
Woo!
I get it.
Going nuts!
Yeah, but so I guess before we kind of jump into all things what we do in the shadows, just to kind of run through some things that we've been watching here, because we have actually, in the last episode where we talked about The Descent, we didn't really have too much that we had watched or anything news related, and I still don't have anything news related tonight, which I know you'll be thrilled to hear.
Whoop, whoop.
But we have been watching some interesting things. The first of which, not necessarily horror, but I would say this is a very dark, black comedy series on Netflix that kind of flew under our radar for a little bit, and you had suggested watching it, and I'm so glad you brought it up, and that is a show called The End of the Fucking World, which is, again, a Netflix show. There's 2 seasons. We are in the middle of season 2 at this point, and it basically tells the story of kind of like almost like a young British Bonnie and Clyde type thing. It's 2 teenagers that kind of go on this little crime spree and run away from home, and there's all kinds of crazy shit that happens to them. But it's really good. I enjoy it quite a bit, and I know you seem to like it quite a bit as well. What are your thoughts on The End of the Fucking World, in case anyone is interested in watching it?
Yeah, we've been kind of digging to see new shows and stuff, and this has been popping up on my Netflix queue or suggested views for a while now, and every time we finish something, I end up being like, okay, well, what's similar to blah, blah, blah that we just finished? Like, we finished Schitt's Creek, and then all of a sudden it's like, what's next for Schitt's Creek? And we started watching Kim's Convenience. So I was like, all right.
And Dairy Girls.
Yes, and Dairy Girls. Oh, yeah. So good.
Because I know you like to have a rotating comedy series that we're watching, because it's nice to lighten things up every once in a while and not just do all horror all the time.
Yes.
Although, I don't know if this is necessarily a feel-good show. I mean, it kind of is a little bit, but it's very dark.
I think it's interesting. Like, it definitely keeps my interest peaked through the show to kind of see what happens next, just because it's so quick moving.
Yeah.
They go from one place to another. They do one crime and another. They're all constantly moving from one place to another. So it definitely keeps my attention, which for me is kind of hard.
Ain't that the truth?
To find a show that I actually like, it's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's definitely, like I mentioned, pretty dark. It touches on a lot of things like physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental illness, a lot of stuff like that. But it does kind of have a heartwarming touch to it because obviously the main character, the kid, his name is James. He at the start of the show thinks that he is en route to becoming a psychopath, and basically he is trying to figure out a person that he wants to kill because
he's already accepted that he's a psychopath.
Yeah, he's accepted that he's a psychopath and he's killed a bunch of animals, kind of following your classic trajectory of being a serial killer. And his next logical step is, okay, I want to kill a person. And this girl, what's her name?
Alyssa,
that's right, Alyssa, walks up to him, starts talking to him, and then he thinks, okay, I think this is the girl that I want to kill. And slowly, over time, he ends up changing his mind. They start to fall in love with each other. So it's kind of a cute little story in a very dark background. So, with that being said, I would highly recommend checking out The End of the Fucking World. And actually, so you mentioned that you always like to pick out something else after we finish one series. So during the credits the other night of one of the episodes, we saw that The End of the Fucking World is based on a comic book of the same name.
Yes, yep.
So I looked into that a little bit, and it's kind of funny because the whole show takes place in England, and the comic book takes place in America with American characters. So they rewrote the entire thing for to have a British cast and have it take place in there.
Interesting.
But the animation is really simple. It's like really minimalist. It's interesting if you Google it. It's kind of cool to see what it looks like versus the show. But the same guy that wrote The End of the Fucking World also has another Netflix show called I Am Not Okay With This. So it's written by the same guy, and it stars, I don't know her name, but the redhead girl that was in the It movies.
Oh, okay. I know who you're talking about. I don't know
she's in that,
either.
So maybe that's something that we can check out after that. All right, so End of the Fucking World on Netflix. I would highly recommend checking it out. It's pretty cool. Not necessarily horror, but worth your time. One thing that is very much horror.
You wouldn't consider that horror?
I would not consider it horror, no. It's much more of a black comedy.
Black comedy, like true, not true crime, but
not necessarily true crime. It's a drama comedy type thing.
All right, fair enough.
But there's serial killers and child molesters and all kinds of crazy shit. So it's
a dark,
not far off.
Dark,
it's not far
comedy.
off.
Yeah.
But one thing that I did watch the other night that is very much horror is a movie also on Netflix that's called The Blackcoat's Daughter. I know you weren't around for this, and I just kind of threw it on in the background. It was another one of those things, kind of like you mentioned with The End of the Fucking World, that had been in my Netflix queue for quite a while, and I had seen it recommended a few times, and I just never pulled the trigger on watching it. And I finally did, and I am so thankful that I did. So this movie, I won't spoil anything here because I know Andrew watched it after I recommended it to him, and we may do an episode on it depending on whether or not people want to. But so the premise of this movie is that there's this prestigious religious boarding school in upstate New York, and it's over winter break. There are two girls whose parents don't show up to pick them up for winter break. So they're essentially stuck at this school until their parents show up. And, the parents obviously are missing under mysterious circumstances, and all this weird stuff starts to happen at the school. So there's the two girls, the story is told kind of between the point of view of the two girls that are stuck at the school. And then there's another third girl who doesn't seem to be connected to those two. So it's kind of told from the point of view of those three girls, but it's very creepy. It's very interesting. It's, again, well worth your time. So this stars Kiernan Shipka, she played Sally Draper in Mad Men.
Love her, yeah.
Which obviously, in Mad Men, that was on a while ago, so she's pretty little when that show starts out. So it's kind of weird seeing her as an adult now. I think she's like 21 now.
Okay.
So she's in that. She's also been plays Sabrina in the Sabrina Chilling Adventures of Sabrina show on Netflix. And another character in the movie is played by Emma Roberts, who has been in a ton of American Horror Story seasons. She was in Coven, pretty much all of them, I think, since Coven. But yeah, The Blackcoat's Daughter, awesome movie, actually directed by a guy named Oz Perkins, who is the son of Anthony Perkins, who was Norman Bates in Psycho.
If you say Perkins, I think of Heavyweights.
Oh yeah, no connection there, but. Yeah, it's a cool movie, and who knows? Down the line, we may end up covering that in a future episode. I guess we shall see. So I know Andrew's seen it; he liked it. Kat, you just got to watch that and check it out and see if it's something that you want to cover, because there's a lot of stuff going on there that I think you might find interesting. So
I'll check it out.
So that's what I got for watching stuff. And anything else that you've been watching or doing or?
No, I've just been watching The Crown.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to catch up on that. Nothing scary.
Cool.
I mean, it's kind of interesting, but I won't even get into that because that's not really relevant.
Sure.
But yeah.
Fair enough.
So next item up is
news. I got no news actually. Like I mentioned before, I don't have anything.
That's fabulous.
There's been some stuff that has come out, but nothing really of note that was of interest to me. So I guess. With that being said, are you ready to talk about some What We Do in the Shadows?
Yes.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, obviously, it's just me and Kat tonight, and Kat is going to lead the way on this and kind of guide us through some stuff on What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes.
Which I'm excited for, because I think the last time that I didn't fully write an outline and host was... Oh, shit. I think it was when we did Hellraiser with Hannah from Old Colony Cast, because I think Andrew did that one. So it's been since like November. So it's nice to kind of take it back.
And then I kind of chicken out like to host them because I get a little stage fright. I get nervous. I'm reading this tablet and I'm like, ah! So it's just a little nerve wracking.
Very relaxed here.
Anxiety
you're just sitting here with your husband. You don't need to feel anxiety. You just pretend the microphone's not even here.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Fair enough.
All right. So What We Do in the Shadows. Kat, take it away.
Okay. So. Overall thoughts on the show. Michael.
Yeah. You want me to start?
Yes. Since there's no one else here.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if you wanted to start or not. It's me and you. But, so I love What We Do in the Shadows. I also love the What We Do in the Shadows movie. Both of them kind of come from an awesome premise. But with that being said, actually, I think that the show takes the idea of the movie and makes it better. The characters in the show are all hilarious, and they have the ability to, because it's kind of serialized. It's 10 episodes per season. There's only been 2 seasons so far, and it's been renewed for a third. It kind of has a chance to expand the mythology of the show a little bit, right? So you get a little bit more of different characters. You get some of the same characters from the movie, which I'm sure we'll get to in a little bit, but. When I first heard that they were coming out with the show, I was very intrigued because the commercials they had for it, like the little quick trailers, were hilarious. Everything about the show is hilarious. And I was a little worried that this might have just been a retread of the movie. Which I think the first episode is, because you kind of have to establish what's going on in the world. But beyond that, they hit some home runs with this show.
Oh, I agree.
I absolutely love it. And, while this is not horror, it hilariously pokes fun at certain horror tropes, especially vampire movies and vampire TV shows, and it has lots of nods to some classic horror movies that horror nerds like myself pick up on. Which I have a section in here where I'm going to talk about some of those. And I mean, above all else, this is a comedy show, and this show makes me laugh my ass off. Honestly, I don't know if there's a show that makes me laugh harder. I know we're going to talk about where it ranks amongst our favorite TV shows as well, but I can't say enough good things about this show, and I feel like I don't know a lot of people that watch it. Yeah. Which is kind of crazy to me, because this should be watched more.
I was going to say, when you... well, we can roll that into my thoughts. Mm-hmm. I forget when you first asked me if I wanted to watch this show, and I was just like, I don't know. Like, what is it really about and stuff like that? And I remember watching a couple of the trailers, and then finally, like, watching the show and being like, I can get down on this. This is actually pretty funny.
Yeah,
and then once I started watching it, I kept asking people if they watched it, and everyone's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then
never heard of it. Yeah.
Didn't FX? Well, when we originally watched it, it was like week to week. I thought, wasn't FX like merging as FXX or something? There was something going on like with the actual TV too, so then we couldn't like watch it or something?
No. So we could watch it, but so essentially what happened was, so FX has been in the TV game for a long time. They did shows like Sons of Anarchy, Justified, The Shield, lots of great dramas, and also they do Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Right. So essentially what they wanted to do is they wanted to have a channel that was dedicated towards their drama series. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to have a separate network that was specifically geared towards comedy, which is where FXX comes in. So What We Do in the Shadows is now on FXX, along with like Always Sunny in Philadelphia and whatever other comedies they do on there.
Yeah.
Archer, I know, is another one they do. They do a bunch of them. I don't watch a ton of them, but Always Sunny and What We Do in the Shadows are the two that I watch on FXX. So.
But I mean, I immediately kind of fell in love with like the whole premise of it. The characters are amazing.
Yeah.
So it has that kind of humor. I don't know what kind of humor you really call it, but
I mean, it's very quirky. It's very British humor, I feel like, and obviously, so the show and the movie were created and written by Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi, who are both from New Zealand. Mm-hmm. So it's got that unique, almost kind of Australian, New Zealand type sense of humor, but it also, I feel like it does a good job of critiquing certain aspects of American culture. Yeah. Like there's an episode where they, Nandor tries to become a citizen of the United States, and that's all pretty funny. And so they blend lots of different humor, I would say. So
we'll say it's a mockumentary comedy horror TV series.
Perfect way to say it. Yeah, it is a mockumentary, quote unquote, which, we talked about a couple weeks ago, another vampire movie, actually, 30 Days of Night, where it was an all-time great premise for a scary vampire story with people being in the Arctic Circle where there's 30 days of darkness. Perfect way for vampires to come in and feed. And I think this is a perfect setup for a comedy show where it's just a documentary crew following around a group of vampires, ancient, old vampires in modern day Staten Island, which is it's great. Everything about this show is just so well done. I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, and I was actually, that kind of helps me roll into so you said Jermaine.
You left an R out there.
Left an R out.
That's okay. Jermaine Clement.
I had a couple of quotes from him saying what they tried to do with the show. So he said they stayed pretty basic 70s, 80s vampires rules in the show and a little bit of 30s. So they turn into bats. They can't go into sunlight. Yeah. They don't sparkle in the sun at all. They die. They have to be invited in wherever they go. Yep. And it's funny that that's another aspect of the show, is that it's a documentary. So sometimes you hear them breaking the third wall, right? Yes. And all of a sudden they'll acknowledge that there's cameras there filming them. Yeah. Which is kind of a fun little way for them to film this whole series, is that they don't always acknowledge it, but when they do, you're kind of like, oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's a nice little touch.
Yeah. And as a side note, too, talking about filming and stuff, as a designer, I really appreciate how they Photoshop a lot of the older era pictures. Yeah. Like, with the characters, with the actors in them. Yeah. In, older eras. So, Nandor is, this, king, and, Nadia is, this, voluptuous, lady.
Yeah. I love that stuff, too.
It's awesome.
It is incredibly well done. So, if you watch, the opening credits, it has, photos of all of them, throughout the decades in the U.S. So, it shows them, the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and they're all done up in all kinds of different, outfits from those eras. Right. But it is fucking hilarious. So Nandor is supposed to be this great ruler from the Ottoman Empire, and they create all these fake paintings of him, kind of pillaging and burning cities and all this stuff. Yeah. And the way they do all that stuff, it's a nice touch, and it's hysterical. I love the way they do that.
So this whole series was filmed, well, actually we'll talk about the first season, was filmed in only a little over 2 months in Toronto, Canada. Mm-hmm. And they pride themselves on not using any CGI. So a lot of their stuff they wanted to have filmed old school, as they said. They didn't want to have any digital characters, anything like that.
And I know you're a huge fan of that.
I do. I actually really appreciate that. And the writer-producer Paul Sims said that there was something about old-fashioned way that makes things more interesting. When you can tell it's digital and rubbery and fake looking, it's just not as appealing. So it's something to be said for them, the way that they shot everything. Mm-hmm. And they said I was reading a lot about this show as we were preparing for the podcast, and they said that Bram Stoker's Dracula?
Bram Stoker.
Bram Stoker's, yeah, Jesus. Was the main inspiration for the main set of the Vampire's Mansion, except it's in Staten Island, and they have let their mansion go, we'll say. Yeah. So it's just a shithole.
It's a dump,
Yeah, it's a dump. One other thing is the opening credits has a fun song, You're Dead, by Norma
Tanega?
Tanega?
Yeah.
That's a 1966. It was recorded.
So when I was reading through this, I was actually very surprised to see that because I thought for sure this was some recent song that kind of was about to blow up from this show, and it's an old ass song, which is kind of cool.
It's like it kind of plays with everything else. It's kind of a funny song, but like it's like you say you want to live long, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead. It's
out of this world.
It's cute. It's a cute song. It fits perfectly. So do you want to get into the background and the vampires and the storyline?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so basic premise of the movie: there's 4 vampires and the familiar, which we will talk about what a familiar is in a minute. They're living in a mansion in Staten Island, New York. So there is
Staten Island.
Nandor. I'm going to butcher these names, so maybe I'm going to have you read these. There's Nandor the Relentless.
Yep.
And that's...
it's spelled Kayvon,
Kayvon
but
Novak?
I believe it's supposed to be pronounced Kevin Novak. I think he's British, but I think he has like a Persian background.
Okay, cool. Then there's Laszlo Cravensworth, who's played by Matt Berry.
Yep, pretty famous British actor. Yep.
Nadia is played by Natasha
Demetrio?
I
think, Natasha Demetrio. Yep.
Then there's Colin Robinson. Who is Mark Proch. Jesus.
Proch,
this is awful.
Tough names.
And then there's Guillermo de la Cruz. See, I can do Spanish names.
Yes.
Spanish names, fine.
No problem.
Any other thing?
Yeah.
No idea.
Well, all those years of high school Spanish have helped you out maybe in a major
and
way.
trips to Mexico. Yeah, they'll help.
Guillermo de la Cruz.
Is played by Harvey Guillen.
Guillen?
I think
it's Guillen.
Guillen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, these vampires moved from Europe 200 years ago because there was a lot of prejudice against the vampires at that time.
Yep.
In 1861.
Yep.
So, they moved to Staten Island, decided to get away from Europe.
And do you know why they chose to stay in Staten Island? Do you know why they actually chose to stay there? Well, they tell what's his name?
They said the boat just dropped them off,
the Baron just dropped them off in
Yes.
Staten Island, and that's where they wanted. That's where they decided to stay, just because the boat dropped them off there. So,
yes.
yeah.
So, going back to the familiar.
Yes.
So, one of the things I don't know if in other vampire movies are there familiar.
There's in traditional vampire lore, there usually is some sort of a familiar that helps the vampires find their prey and kind of leads them around. So, like. Recent example, so 30 Days of Night.
I was like, did we just watch a movie with a familiar?
Yep, so Ben Foster, that crazy guy that was just called The Stranger, the one that asked for raw hamburger in the bar.
Oh, yes.
So he was there familiar.
I forgot.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
I was like, we just watched something.
Yeah, so in lots of traditional vampire stories, there are familiars that kind of help vampires, find their way around everyday life. Find victims, that type of thing. Yep.
So Guillermo, the familiar, describes in one of the first episodes what it's like being a familiar. He says being a familiar is like being their best friend who is also a slave.
Perfect way to describe it. Guillermo's such a great character. He cracks me up.
I want to say when we get to characters, he may be one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I kind of like all of them.
It was very tough to choose when I was actually trying to narrow down some of my favorites, but I know we'll get to that.
Yeah. And on the pilot episode, I love it when it's Guillermo's 10-year anniversary, and he does the whole, he awakens!
Yeah, I love that.
Very cool, master. Very scary. He's just he's such a fun little guy that's just, such a nerd, but he's such a great character.
Yeah.
Who dreams one day to become a vampire. So I think most of the familiars, because then later on in season 2, you meet Nandor's other familiar, the older man. I forget his name. Mm-hmm. And, because Guillermo's getting a little bit fed up at being his familiar, saying, "You're not treating me well. This lady over here is going to make me a vampire." Mm-hmm. So, and then Nandor's like, "Well, then I suggest you take it." And then he leaves, and then he's like, "Well, can you come back now?" But
you don't know what you got till it's gone, Nandor.
I was going to say, but then so Nandor's other familiar comes back, And at the end of that episode, Nandor ends up turning him into a vampire because he bats off. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Guillermo knew that because he'd be pretty angry.
Yeah.
But Guillermo gets pretty angry throughout this series.
I mean, understandably so. I mean, they kind of treat Guillermo like shit, which is, provides some of the best comedy in the show, I feel like. It's, the constant putting down of Guillermo. But you could argue that Guillermo starts to get his comeuppance a little bit towards the end of season 1 and into season 2. He starts to kind of come into his own a little bit and find his true calling.
He does.
Teaser.
Some of his jobs, we'll say, around the house, which I would think are expected of any familiar, is to keep the house tidy, make sure there's no sunlight, and he gets rid of carcasses, but also finds people who are easy to kill.
Virgins,
especially
Guillermo.
the virgins.
The virgins.
Yes. So he has a pretty hefty job, and when you find out when he leaves how hard it is for them to maintain, because there's just bodies all over the mansion, and there's like candles are burning because they're like that candle wasn't in my room before I went to bed, so I'm not responsible to blow it out. Like, so it's he keeps everyone together, I think. So, enough about familiars. We should move on to the next, the first vampire type we should talk about that is not a regular vampire, but an energy/psychic vampire.
Yeah, it'd be hard to leave him off this list. I feel like he could have a whole episode on his own.
Colin Robinson. So, he is we'll say he's shunned a little bit by the rest of the group, the other three. But he's a little bit different. So, he is a day walker. He's not affected by the sun. Mm-hmm. He calls the office his hunting ground. Mm-hmm. So he works in like this basic cubicle-based, like, huge office. Yeah. And he just sucks on like everyone's annoyances pretty much. He drains energy out of people merely by talking to them. But he'll bore you with a long conversation. He'll enrage you. And he's the only type of vampire that can drain another vampire's energy. Yeah. And he even says, he's like, you probably even know an energy vampire. We're the most common types of vampires. Yep. And he just, like, in the office, he's constantly, like, chasing people down, like, following them to the bathroom.
Following them in the bathroom and, like, shoving his head underneath the stall, like, to continue the conversation. Yeah.
And, like, he'll sharpen his pencil for, like, 20 minutes just to, like, get on people's nerves. Yep. He goes to, like, the town hall just to, like, suck the life, which, I mean, is very appropriate, too. So like, funny. It's all, it's awesome. But he just, like, bores you with this, like, stupid conversation. But he also brings, like, a little bit of comedic relief to it.
What is an ordinance? Yeah. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, an ordinance is blah, 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 blah.
And he's, so like, a nerdy-looking guy. He's, like...
So he's great. He might be... I mean, he started to kind of... Like, there was an episode in Season 2 where he gets a promotion, which is fucking hilarious, that episode. But he was kind of almost the unsung hero of the show. And so the actors... He does a great job. But I don't know if you remember this. I know you are not a huge fan of this show like I am, but he actually was in... either the first or second season of Better Call Saul.
I knew you were going to... I was like, you're going to say Better Call Saul.
Yeah, he was in Better Call Saul, and he basically, he ends up coming to be defended by Saul for something, and he was funny in that show, too. That's actually the only two things I've ever seen him in, but he's fantastic in this. He's great.
Yeah. So he was a different type of vampire. Yep. And then there's one more vampire he's in the first season, not the second season. The Baron.
The Baron.
So initially, I think he was the only kind of scary vampire. Like, he initially, they open his coffin, and immediately you're like, oh. Yeah. This isn't like the rest of them. This guy's, like, for serious. He's like an old school looking vampire.
Yeah, so he's meant to look like the original Dracula or like Nosferatu, like that type of vampire. Looks a little bit more like a bat with like the long fingers and the weird nose and the pointy ears.
He's got red eyes.
Yep,
red eyes. I think he kind of, well, not with the ears and stuff. But he has like, I guess he just has the fingers of like Pale Man.
Well, it's funny you say that because the actor that plays him is a guy named Doug Jones.
Oh, did he play Pale Man?
And Doug Jones is the guy that actually played the Pale Man in Pan's Labyrinth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
so you called it.
I called it.
Wow.
Man, look at me. Look at me go.
Wow, look at you.
So the Baron also, he's, he's from the old country, they say, and whatever, and he had sexual interactions with Laszlo and Nadia. Yeah. And he's just kind of this, like, goofy old vampire, like, that's now in this new world of Staten Island, New York.
Yep.
And that's, he comes, like, to Staten Island to shame them, to say, you haven't taken over the world yet, and whatever, and they're just like, geez, man, like, what are we supposed to do? We're just stuck on Staten Island. You dropped us off here.
Yep.
But his character kind of evolves, and he's like, I want to eat pizza. I want to go out and get drunk. Let's go get shots.
Yeah,
and then,
they go to, like, the nightclub.
It's kind of, and they're like, oh, well, what do you want me to wear? Because he comes down in, like, ruffles.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah, he's a funny character.
He's a good character. There's a couple of other side characters.
Well, I was going to say, before you go off the Baron, you were
Yeah.
talking about, like, sometimes when they break the third wall
Yes.
and they talk directly to the camera.
Yep.
One of the funniest instances of that is when he first comes out of his coffin.
Right.
And he starts talking to them, and all of a sudden he just looks right at the camera. He's like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's a camera crew, Baron. Don't worry about the camera crew. They're just filming us. She says,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
That was the first time they broke the third wall.
Yep.
And then ultimately, can I do spoiler alert?
Yeah,
here?
this is spoiler the whole time. Yeah,
So
go ahead.
ultimately, Guillermo accidentally kills him, and by opening the front door to the mansion, and he just immediately turns into dust because it's dawn.
Yep.
And then the whole thing after that is they go to trial, and it's this whole big mess after that. And
Yep.
then Guillermo's standing there like, I did it. They're like, you did this?
Yeah.
It's really funny. Another character that I wanted to mention that I actually really appreciate it is Jenna.
Yeah.
Jenna is a girl who's in college who Guillermo initially brings to their house as a virgin, as a sacrifice, a sacrificial virgin, for them to eat. And Nadia ends up turning her into a vampire, and Guillermo gets pissed. He's like, she's a vampire now?
My ravenous little monkey.
But she is hysterical because she has no idea what she's doing. She's still living in the dorms. Like, her college roommate is looking at her being like, oh my god, my roommate that I'm living with is, like, levitating while she's sleeping. She's violently throwing up all over the place. She's pale. She starts smoking. Like, her body starts smoking in the sun.
Yep.
But overall, I thought Jenna's a really funny character, and she's trying to find her, like, special talent.
Yeah,
So
that's a good episode. Yeah, she's a good character, and I think it's funny because, you know...
Nadia,
Jesus Christ. So Nadia kind of sees her, starts talking to her, and almost kind of has pity on her because she's kind of like a little nerdy girl.
Right.
She, like, you know... You get the impression that guys kind of walk all over her, and she hasn't really found herself, hasn't like come into herself as a woman yet. So Nadia kind of takes it upon herself to turn her into a vampire to kind of help her, you know, come into her own, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
So yeah, good character, pretty funny.
She was pretty cool, and then Jeff, the reincarnation. So Nadia, in another life, had a former human lover, Gregor, who is now the story behind it is she finds him wherever she goes. Like, he gets reincarnated, and every time she finds him, we find out later that Laszlo, Jesus, that Laszlo cuts off his head
every single time
he finds him. And then he tells Nadia that happens, and it's really funny. But he ends up being this kind of... Gregor is supposed to be this big warrior guy, and then she meets Jeff, who is Gregor reincarnated into this Jeff guy, and she's just like, oh, Gregor? And it's like, oh, it's just Jeff.
Jeff.
Like, oh, what kind of name is Jeff? Like, so... That's kind of funny, too. That's one of my favorites.
And his last name is Suckler.
Suckler.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. There's a bunch of other... I mean, I could go on for days. The next door neighbor's awesome. Sean... That's just, like, there, and he sees them, like, gardening late at night and stuff, and it's just like, what the hell are you doing gardening at night? And they go over there, and they're like, you will not remember any of this, so they're fine.
I love when they do that. They hypnotize people. So funny.
They go to
you will not remember any of this.
They go to the Super Bowl party at his house.
They
think it's the superb owl party. They want to see the great owl.
Yes. Hilarious.
And Haley Joel Osment actually makes a nice little appearance in the show as
another
Topher.
Familiar. Yeah, Topher!
As another familiar, who actually ends up being a zombie.
Yeah, who'd have known a little kid from The Sixth Sense would be a familiar on What We Do in the Shadows 20 years later.
He's grown up to be this, like, little fuzzy...
I was going to say, that was the way you described it, like a fuzzy, like, fuzzball. Like, he looks so different than he used to. It's pretty funny.
God, yeah, he's just funny.
Yeah, it's funny seeing him in shit now. Yeah, I agree. Good characters all around.
Yeah. And there were some fun guests. I left that section to you because I knew
you want me to run through some of these?
If you want to run into some of your favorite cameo appearances.
Yes.
By some
yeah,
fun
definitely.
people.
Definitely. So it's kind of, a lot of these characters, they're kind of like blink and you'll miss them cameos. You have to kind of look out for them. But there are a few of them that have been on. You're like, wow, that's pretty awesome. So obviously we talked about the Baron, Doug Jones, who played the Pale Man. He is in pretty much everything that Guillermo del Toro does.
Okay.
He's a favorite of del Toro. So he's been in a bunch of his movies. Obviously, Jenna, we talked about as well, is played by an actress named Beanie Feldstein. It's actually Jonah Hill's younger sister.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said that.
Yeah.
When you look at
them, and
oh
yeah,
my God.
you can totally tell. Craig Robinson, who I love, he's fucking hilarious. He plays Claude, the kind of like the head vampire hunter when Guillermo goes to the mosquitoes, biting anonymous group that he thinks is just he's looking for virgins, so he goes to that. It turns out they're a group of vampire killers, which is pretty hilarious. And then after that, Nick Kroll, who is a pretty famous comedian. He's been in a bunch of shit. He plays, I love the name, Simon the Devious.
Yes.
He's been in a few episodes. He's in the one where they go to the nightclub with the Baron and a few other ones, so he's great.
Oh, and he about the hat.
Yes.
Yep. The hat and the Laszlo has this hat, and Simon the Devious stole it from him one time before or something, and then he puts it on in the nightclub, and he's like, "Ooh, what's that thing in the back of your? What's that feeling in the back of my head?" And they're like, "Oh, it's the witch's asshole or something." And I'm just like, "Oh my god,
the witch's asshole, Laszlo.
Yeah.
The witch's asshole." Yeah. So we got Nick Kroll as Simon the Devious. Then, obviously, there's a big episode, the trial episode, which we kind of talked about already, where Laszlo, Nadia, and Nandor all go to the Vampiric Council because they're accused of killing the Baron. And that's where you get kind of a lot of these awesome cameos. So you get Jermaine Clement as Vladimir and Taika Waititi as Viago. They're both from the original What We Do in the Shadows movie, so this kind of confirmed that the show and the movie did take place in the same universe, which you kind of figured they might, but that just kind of confirmed it. In addition to that, you also get Tilda Swinton here playing herself, reprising her role from a movie that she was in. Evan Rachel Wood reprising her role from True Blood as herself. Danny Trejo is in that episode, reprising his vampire role from Dusk Till Dawn. Paul Rubens is there. He was a vampire in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, not even the TV series.
I never got into Buffy.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends
I didn't really either.
Yeah.
Wesley Snipes is there, reprising his role from the Blade movies.
As himself.
They
kind of half pay attention to.
So Tilda Swinton, Evan Rachel Wood, Danny Trejo, Paul Rubens, and Wesley Snipes all play themselves in that episode, which is great. Also in that episode, you get Dave Bautista, who is a pretty famous actor now, but used to be a wrestler. He plays a character named Garrett, who is in full, like, he's one of those guys, like, if you blink and you miss it, he's in heavy prosthetics in his face, but you can tell it's his voice. He's been in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. He was in one of the recent Bond movies, so he's kind of establishing himself more and more as a pretty serious actor. We already talked about Haley Joel Osment playing Topher. Great, great little cameo.
He's so fun in that role because he starts out as like that kind of goody two shoes, like personal assistant almost. Like,
kiss ass. He's like an Eddie Haskell. He's like, pretending to do a lot when they aren't around, when they're around, and then once all the vampires go away, he just kind of stops doing everything and lets Guillermo do all the work. Right. So he walks all over Guillermo, just like everybody else does.
And then when he's a zombie, he becomes this like macho, like
perfect
macho
segue.
Man or whatever.
Yeah. So after Topher gets killed. They take him to a warlock who's played by Benedict Wong, another pretty famous actor who is he's in the Marvel movies as one of Doctor Strange's assistants. He plays a warlock in this that brings Topher back to life, and Topher turns into a zombie and tries to kill everybody. That's a great episode. Very, very good one. But perhaps the biggest and best cameo of the entire show for a character named Jim the Vampire is played by Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself.
Who's that?
Mark Hamill?
No.
Luke Skywalker?
No. Who does he play?
He plays the vampire that Laszlo owes money when Laszlo runs away and becomes Jackie Daytona.
Yes, yes.
Oh, it's such a great episode.
Yeah, that's
More on
really...
that.
We just... yep.
But yeah,
yep.
Mark Hamill, that was an awesome cameo. I remember when I first saw that, I was like, holy shit, how the hell did they get him? That was really, really clever.
That was a
really
great
cool.
episode.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's been probably a few other ones that I missed, but those are some of my favorites for the cameos itself.
Yeah. So, since we're talking so much about cameos and characters, who do you have a favorite character? Do you have a top 3 of the whole series? You can pick. I mean, I was thinking you can pick one out of the top 4 and then maybe a couple of cameos. But I mean, it doesn't matter. You can wild card. Go ahead.
It's very tough. It's very tough, like I mentioned before. So I think if I had to pick an absolute favorite, it's Nandor, because Nandor just makes me laugh the hardest. Like I would compare Nandor's character. Like, the actor is playing it almost as if Borat were a vampire. That's kind of like what it reminds me of a little bit, like with his voice and like kind of the way he, like his sense of humor. It cracks me up. So he probably makes me laugh the hardest, but I guess if I had to pick a top 3, it's kind of hard to not pick Nandor, Laszlo, and Nadia.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like an insane person leaving Colin Robinson off my top 3, but I think Nadia's funnier in certain aspects. Laszlo is fucking hysterical too. I love when he goes off about his old, because he's supposedly this man whore throughout times. He just like goes around slaying women, and he's filmed vampire pornos in the past that they talk about in the orgy episode, and it's funny listening to him talk about his sexual conquests. Like he has a topiary garden out in front of the house that's all...
Wait, that's my later.
Yeah,
we can't
okay.
talk about
we'll
that
talk
yet.
about that later. But I think probably the main 3 vampires and my 3 favorite characters with Nandor probably getting the edge is my personal favorite. Mm-hmm. What about you?
I love Guillermo.
Yeah.
I think that his whole character from beginning to end of
There's no
season
bad
2
choices here. He's a great character too.
Probably my favorite character. I love Nadia. Mm-hmm. And then I think I have to go with Nandor too, just because he's just, and I hate to leave out Laszlo, but I think that the dynamic between Nandor and Guillermo is just hysterical, because they're almost like an old married couple in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like, they just kind of argue about the stupid little things, even though, like, Nandor's his boss. Mm-hmm. But then Guillermo's like, respect me. But then Guillermo's also, like, trying to help him when he goes out in public, like when he's checking out at Party City or whatever, and he's like...
that whole scene is hysterical.
It's amazing. It's really funny.
Like, it's one of those scenes where it was in the trailer and it's in the pilot, so you knew it was coming, and it still just makes me laugh so hysterically hard every time with the creepy paper.
Yeah, crepe paper.
Crepe paper is
creepy
creepy paper. And he gets obsessed with the glitter because he wants to look like Edward from the Twilight movies, and fucking Guillermo holds up the skeleton hanging thing, and he says, "Oh, master, this is pretty macabre." Yeah. He Nandor just dismisses it and waves his hand, and the thing lights on fire and blows up in Guillermo's hand. It's the interactions between them are fucking hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that those 3, I guess. Yeah, because I have to pick Nadia because she's the only woman.
Yeah.
And I mean, she makes...
She's hilarious.
She is hysterical. Yeah.
Awesome character.
Yeah.
The interactions between her and Jenna are awesome.
Are great, yeah.
I love when Nadia, she turns the ghost of herself into that little doll.
Into the doll, because
she
doesn't ever want her to leave.
Fucking funny.
She wants someone
great.
just like her around all the time.
And just the way she just fucking ranks on Laszlo and Nandor all the time. It's so funny. Like,
awesome.
She calls them a couple of big stupid turkeys that argue about everything. Mm-hmm. Her accent's hilarious. Everything about her is great. They're all hilarious. I don't know. That's a non-answer, but they're all great. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Where does this rank for you for TV shows?
Ooh, so this is clearly a comedy show, so I'm going to lump it amongst my favorite comedies here. With that being said, it is one of my favorite shows on TV right now overall. But I would say for comedy shows, I am a huge fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Letterkenny, South Park, Barry, all comedy shows, and I think this is... Always Sunny is always going to be, no pun intended, probably my favorite. I think I would give this the edge over like Letterkenny or South Park or Barry at this point. So this is probably like second on my list of favorite comedy shows right now.
I think
obviously there's more of Always Sunny, but you know, Sunny's been on for 15 seasons and it's got renewed for like another fucking 5 years, which is insane. So
you can't
there's not as much What We Do in the Shadows, but it's automatically right up there. The show's great.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I mean, I'm a diehard South Park fan till the day I die.
Yeah, I know.
South Park, I like Letterkenny. It's hard for me to understand what they're saying sometimes because they talk so fast.
Letterkenny, the most recent season, hasn't been that good so far.
Yeah.
Either. So, yeah.
But I love, I mean, I love the show, and it takes a lot for me to say I want to watch it again. Like Dairy Girls recently, I'm like, oh, you know what? I just watched it, but I'll watch it again. But it's also only 12 episodes total that's out right now.
I kind of want to watch Dairy Girls again too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay. You can say that. You can say that.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Couldn't say.
So I think it's right up there for me too. Do you have a favorite episode? I don't really have a favorite episode. I kind of love the pilot, to be honest.
The pilot's great.
Like I feel like I could watch the pilot over and over again. There's so many good episodes, but
I have two that it's very close between. Obviously, the trial episode is great because of all of the cameos and the references to past vampire movies, but I'm also a huge fan of the episode in season 2 called On the Run, which, as we discussed with Mark Hamill, this is the episode where Laszlo runs away from everybody to hide from Mark Hamill's vampire because he owes him money from years and years ago, and he creates this alternate persona that is an American character. It's a bartender, and his name is Jackie Daytona.
Yep.
Oh my god, I love that episode.
And
it's friggin' hilarious.
All he does for his disguise is put a toothpick in his
mouth.
Put
a toothpick in his mouth? Yeah, exactly. Yep. Like, Mark Hamill shows up at the bar, he's got the toothpick in his mouth, and all of a sudden he takes it out, and he's like, Laszlo!
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
No, he didn't see him in the mirror.
Oh, right. Sorry.
It was a reflection in the miror.
Oh.
But it was so
Thank
funny.
You for correcting me.
Sorry.
No, I'm not being sarcastic. Thank you. I messed that up.
I know. I really like the show. But also in that episode, it's funny because you're just blown by the fact that it's only the toothpick that is his disguise.
Yeah.
And he says to what's his face, the what is his name in the show?
Who? Jim the vampire. Mark Hamill.
Jim the vampire, and he gives him a card that says Jim the vampire.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, thanks, I'll give you a call, Jim the vampire. He's like, how did you know my name? He's like, well, it says Jim the vampire on your card. Sorry.
Awesome.
Okay.
No, it's okay.
I'm laughing too much in this episode for a scary,
it's okay.
for a scary America's Hometown Horror episode.
Well, I think this is, I think anyone that probably sees the episode title knows they're not in for a serious horror discussion on this episode. This is all for laughs.
Yeah.
So this is probably a perfect one for you to take the lead on. So
thanks. I know I'm not so good with the really scary ones.
That's okay. I didn't mean it as a slight. I meant it as a compliment.
I'm going to throw it to you for facts.
Yep, I got some facts here. I don't have a ton, but
okay.
A couple interesting ones that I found.
Take it away, Michael.
Just show's only a couple years old, so there's not a ton of information out there about it. And obviously, the movie is a completely separate thing, and we want to talk about the TV show here. So maybe we'll do the movie on a later episode. We'll see. But a couple things that I did find. So all of the main cast, excluding Claudine Robinson, so Nandor, Laszlo, and Nadia, all three of the actors wear custom-made vampire fangs that clip into attachments on their teeth. This basically helps to not hinder their speech patterns or their pronunciation.
I was going to say, because I was wondering about that. It's funny that you said that, because when Jenna has her teeth and Nadia's like, bite your lip seductively to lure, and she bites her lip and it just starts gushing blood.
Just squirts out.
She's like, ouch! And I was just like, I wonder if they have actual, what kind of, prosthetic teeth or something.
Yeah. They're all specially designed for each of them, so they basically are able to talk without having to sound like there's something in their mouth.
Well, they definitely do sound a little bit like there's something in their mouth.
Yeah, but not as much as if you were to wear, fangs that you put in your mouth, or a mouth guard. Yeah, exactly. Right. So all custom-made vampire fangs for the main people there. So we talked about Colin Robinson and the concept of psychic vampires, okay?
Yes.
So it seems like that's a pretty funny idea, something that might just be invented for the show. Actually, it was not. So psychic vampires are said to be a real thing. They were first described by a British occultist author named Dion Fortune, and in her book about psychic self-defense. Okay, so, take that with what you will. She claims that she actually encountered such a creature while training as a nurse.
Oh.
So, very random, but apparently, according to this lady, psychic vampires are real. And I think it's not a stretch to go out there and say that everybody listening to this show probably knows one or two psychic vampires in their life that could suck the soul out of a room with boring conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
We probably have a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then probably the most interesting thing that I saw, and I thought this was kind of cool, nice little tie-in, so this kind of shows that they had an idea of where they wanted the show to go from the beginning. So as we mentioned, Guillermo, or Gizmo, as they call him in the show. All the vampires get his name wrong constantly, which is another put down. So Guillermo's last name is De La Cruz. Okay? He's supposed to be Mexican. And De La Cruz translates into English as of the cross.
Yes.
This foreshadows his future as a vampire slayer and his ties to the Van Helsing family.
Yeah.
So pretty clever little tie-in there.
Yes.
So Guillermo of the Cross, Guillermo the Vampire Slayer, Guillermo Van Helsing.
Because in one episode he finds out, he does his ancestry DNA test.
Yes.
And
yes.
So he does one for Nandor, and Nandor finds out he has 200,000 living relatives.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty hilarious. Yeah, so Guillermo of the Cross, pretty cool little fact. You want to hear about some of the direct horror references that I found in this show that I picked up on?
Yeah, let's go.
I didn't even find these on a list or anything. This is just from watching the show, and I jotted them down like as I was seeing it. So, okay, so in the Swearwolves episode, which is the third episode of season 1, obviously you get introduced to the werewolf characters. Pretty cool looking werewolves, if I do say so myself. So the leader of the werewolves, he is wearing the exact same jacket that the character David wears in An American Werewolf in London. So a nice little throwback to
cool.
to An American Werewolf in London.
He looked
there,
good. Wait,
Yeah.
is that the scene when they're dueling?
yes,
kind of?
exactly, yeah,
And then Nandor just throws the squeaky toy off the building
exactly.
and he just follows it and dies.
Yeah, exactly. Probably my favorite horror reference is in the orgy episode where all the people are coming in the front door to attend the orgy. And in walks
The
Mr.
Babadook.
Babadook. Or, as he introduces himself to the vampires, the Badabook. Not the Babadook, not the Babadook, the Badabook. And I know you love the Babadook movie so much, and it's such an iconic character design. And like the way they did the makeup for him, it looks
amazing.
So cool.
It
looks awesome.
He's like glowing blue.
Yeah,
it's
awesome.
amazing. Every time, whenever we watch that episode or the other one, he's in
He's
two
in two.
episodes.
I forget what the other one is, but he's in the orgy one and one other one.
And one other one, and it's just a flash of
the
him.
Badabook.
But when you see him, you're like, ooh, like it just grabs you, and you're like, oh, his makeup is great.
I know what episode he's in. He's in the ghost episode because all the vampires are saying they don't believe in ghosts, and Guillermo's like, okay, let me get this straight. So we've seen vampires, we've seen werewolves, we've seen trolls, we've seen Babadooks,
but ghosts are not
and
real.
Ghosts aren't real. Yeah, exactly. So pretty hilarious there. But I love the Badabook. Awesome character.
He's amazing.
Awesome little cameo.
I'm always like, can you rewind it? I just want to see him
I remember
again.
like the first time we watched that, he popped on screen. I was like, the Babadook. I was like, yes.
That was so
awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
Obviously, we kind of talked about the trial episode a little bit already, but obviously there's some awesome references to many famous vampire movies and TV shows. We mentioned Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie. Mentioned Blade, True Blood. The movie that Tilda Swinton was in, where she played a vampire, was called Only Lovers Left Alive.
Oh.
And then obviously From Dusk Till Dawn.
She kind of just looks like
with Danny Trejo. She does kind of look like a vampire. It's actually a perfect role for her.
It anyway. Yeah.
So one that you kind of have to pay attention to in that episode to pick up on is when they're all kind of doing the roll call around with the council of the Vampiric Council. Mm-hmm. They call attendance for Brad and Tom.
Oh, yeah.
And they're not there. So this is obviously a reference to Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise from Interview with the Vampire, which I thought was a pretty cool little touch.
Yeah.
So,
and there wasn't there another one?
There might have been another one too. I just remembered the Interview with the Vampire one with
Why
Brad
was
and Tom.
Pee Wee Herman in there?
So Pee Wee Herman, or Paul Rubens, he played a vampire in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie.
Oh.
Yeah. So, not the TV show, the movie.
The movie.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So, so that's in the trial episode. And there's also an episode called Ancestry, which is where Guillermo finds out, obviously, that he is a descendant of Van Helsing. We kind of touched on that already. There's another episode called The Curse. And this is the episode where Guillermo goes to Mosquito Biting Anonymous, or whatever it's called, and he finds out they're all vampire hunters. And they decide to go to the house to start killing the vampires, and Guillermo thinks that they're going to Nandor, Laszlo, and Nadia's house.
I did too.
And it's a different vampire den they go to. There's 1,000 of them in there. but there is one of the first vampires that they see are two twin girls that are dressed identically, and that is very clearly supposed to be a reference to The Shining.
Yeah,
which I picked up on immediately. If you're a fan of The Shining, it's always easy to pick up on Shining references.
Yeah.
Very cool one. I think you probably noticed this one.
Okay.
But in the Witches episode, just called Witches.
Yes.
So Laszlo and Nandor are lured to a coven of witches by a black goat named Peter.
Yes.
This is obviously a reference to the witch with Black Phillip, which is pretty cool.
Black Phillip.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then obviously, you get various types of horror monsters in there. We talked about the vampires, the ghosts, werewolves, obviously the Baron, who's supposed to be like a Nosferatu or a Dracula. There's trolls in an episode, like big trolls.
Yep.
That was a cool one.
Because the sun came up and he froze again.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of awesome horror references for those that pay attention to that shit like I do.
Yes.
Some cool stuff in there. And that's what I got for facts and horror references. I will give it back to you, Kat.
Cool. Well, let's move on to categories.
Okay.
Okay. Michael, do you find this movie scary?
Nope.
Not
Show.
movie. Sorry, show. Back
Nope.
it up. No,
Nope.
I don't either.
It's a comedy.
No, and even
It's
when
a comedy.
when they kill people and stuff,
It's very gory.
It's gory, yes. They drop people from the sky. People fall off buildings, but at the same time, you're not really really grossed out about it because
No.
they kind of don't show it.
It's
in
like
a
slapsticky gore, played for comedy. Yeah, there's never anything in here where they're really trying to scare you.
I think the scariest thing was the Baron.
Yeah, the Baron. I mean, the makeup and all the monster stuff is really good. It's just obviously not. It's played to be comedic and not scary.
Right.
So I'd say a hard no on that. And the movie's also not scary. The movie's also funny. So
Favorite scene?
favorite
I have
scene.
I have three. So
I have quite a few. Would you like to go first?
I'll go first.
In case I step on a few of yours.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Go ahead.
Fair. So Laszlo has his I already forget the name. Topiary Gardens. And he decides to he has these vaginas.
The vulva.
The vulva. Sorry.
The
bushes. And one of them that the werewolf defiles is his mother's vulva. And I'm just like, oh my god, the fact that this is even it's hysterical because you're just sitting there looking at a garden full of vaginas. And he's
so ridiculous.
Could you imagine being the next door neighbor?
Oh, God.
And he's just, he's so proud of his gardening.
Oh, he loves it. He's obsessed
with
with it.
This is the bunny, and this is this, and this is that, and this is my mother's vulva.
My mother's vulva.
Another scene that I liked was one of the Baron scenes when he's out in the club and stuff. But when he eats pizza, because they're not supposed to eat human food. So he eats this pizza, and he's like, "Oh, it kind of burns. There's garlic in this." And then all of a sudden, he just starts violently vomiting to the point where he's then flying around like a balloon in the air, like losing its helium just everywhere, violently throwing up.
That's an hilarious scene.
That was really funny. And actually, in season 2, this actually made me. This hits close to home. Because I also hate social media.
Yep.
Colin Robinson finds social media, and he's like, he says, "Oh, you can drain energy from people through social media."
Yeah.
And he says, when you call them a dumbass, you've got them. You can drain their energy via social media without even being near them. It's surprisingly simple to get total strangers completely furious with you. And then he ends that whole scene with people should really get a life.
Yep.
And I'm like, that is so mic drop done.
Yep.
And it's so because he's just getting off on this. He's he has 5 different laptops on his bed, just hazing people, and it's amazing.
Talk about breaking the third wall. That's speaking directly to the audience. Hey, all you idiots out there on social
shut
media.
up.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Your scenes.
Oh, my turn? Okay.
Yes, your turn.
So I guess these are just favorite scenes or things that kind of made me laugh the hardest that I thought were the most clever things. So every time that Laszlo, when he decides to turn into a bat and fly off, he just yells, "Bat!"
Yes.
He turns into the bat, and then all of a sudden when he comes back, he says, "Human form!" And he comes back down. That gets me every time. I love that. That gets me every single time. We talked a little bit about the creepy paper, the crepe paper. With the glitter, with the Twilight reference, hilarious stuff. The trial scene's great, but I already covered that. The episode in season 2 where Colin gets the promotion at work.
Oh, yeah.
And he gets so powerful that he can start to fly. He starts to grow his hair back. he can multiply himself, and he basically he's able to drain energy so quickly and powerfully that he turns Nandor, Nadja, and Laszlo into like old people. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But throughout the entire episode, I think it's that one, he keeps trying to tell a joke, perfect dad joke, where somebody says, "Oh, like blah 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 blah," and he says, "Yeah, kind of like Updog."
Oh my god!
Like,
you tried to explain this joke, and I was just
you were like, "What?
I don't understand." I was like, "What's up? What's up, dog?" And
yeah,
you're like, "What's up,
what's
dog?
Up, dog?
What's up, dog?"
And you were like, "What?" I was like,
understand.
listen to what I'm saying to you.
Yeah.
What's up, dog? And
Yeah.
you were like, "Oh, okay, I think I get it. That's not that funny." I thought that was
God.
pretty goddamn funny.
Yeah, that's all right.
And anything that where Laszlo's talking about his previous sexual escapades makes me laugh every time. Like when the ghost of himself shows up in the ghost episode, and his ghost self is telling him that he was in the middle of having an orgasm when he died, and he never finished his orgasm, so Laszlo needs to help finish him off. When Laszlo talks about the times that he was making the vampire pornos, and they have all like the old footage of all of them, those are fucking hilarious. When he talks about having sex with the Baron, like having threesomes with the Baron and Nadia back in the day, like, all that stuff cracks me up. He's a great character. So yeah, those were what I had for my favorite scenes.
I think my favorite episode was the orgy one, because I think everything about that was just. I think I just laughed through the entire thing because it was just so outrageous,
ridiculous.
Okay, well that brings us to cast replacements. Do you think that anyone in the cast should be replaced?
Nope.
I don't think so either.
They're
I
all
think
perfect.
Everyone did a really good job.
Yeah, they're all perfect. Perfectly cast, perfectly written, everything's great. And this is such a character-driven show. You mentioned that at the beginning, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
perfect way to describe it.
All we've talked about is all the characters in it. I mean, all the
characters
cameos,
overplot,
like the other people. I mean, it's awesome. It's run by the it's essentially. Didn't I say this before? It's essentially Seinfeld. Like you can go and just drop into one episode and be like.
Yeah, exactly. There's no. I mean, there are a few things that if you pay attention to, you'll pick up on. But like you can, it's just mostly individual episodes with a standalone plot for most of the episodes. Yeah, just them getting put into ridiculous situations. Right. So hilarious. Yeah, kind of like Seinfeld in that sense, or even Always Sunny, or something like that. Yep.
Best stuff.
So I had for me Topher.
I was gonna say that would have been my other one.
Yeah, Topher, and then I mean. He's going to be my favorite because I think I know who you're going to say. Who? What's yours?
Oh, wait. I was going to say, you wanted to Topher's death, though. You should talk about it.
Oh, obviously, it's just funny because he's such a douchebag in the episode, and then of all the ways for him to die, he steps into a koi pond in their backyard that happens to be electrified, and he shocks himself to death.
No, Topher.
Topher. That's Topher. That's
how
he...
they try to kill Topher like 10 times, and he won't die. Because he's a zombie.
No, I understand that, but the way he dies in the first place, when they bring him to the Warlock, he steps into a pond that's electrified and he dies. And they bring him to the Warlock to revive him. That's when he turns into Topher, the zombie.
So you think
they try and kill him a million times.
So Topher's first death was good for you?
All of that. I'm saying all of it.
I liked it when they tried to kill him and he wouldn't die.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they put a stake through his heart. Like Guillermo throws him off the balcony. He won't die. Rips his arm off. And then Nandor tries to kill him like 3 times. He kills him the first time, and he like starts getting up, and he's like, "This fucking guy." Yeah. So I had Topher for mine. I gotta say Topher all day.
Yeah. Oh my god, Nandor when he's like, "This fucking
guy."
Just because then he starts saying he's like, well, he was a good man, and he starts saying like this whatever
He was a good man, Guillermo.
And then he's like,
this
fucking guy. He won't die. But anyway, so my best death, I think, is when Guillermo accidentally burns the Baron to death when he opens the front door. Because it not only, like, did they prepare for the Baron so much for his coming, but then you actually see, that's the first time you see a vampire die. Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's still a real thing. Yep. And that also brings into the whole... trial thing, and it kind of leads into the next few things that happen to them. So they kind of all look at each other like, "Oh no!" But then, like, and Guillermo then knows that he's like a vampire killer. He's like, "Oh my god, I did that myself. I didn't mean to." Would this series?
I would say the you talked about it before too, but the werewolf dying with the squeaky toy.
That's really good too, because he just was like squeak, squeak, throw off, and he just followed it right over. So.
Yes. Sorry, you were saying.
Would this series make a good haunted attraction?
I'll tell you, I've heard worse ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's not played to be scary, but there are lots of monsters and creatures in here. Like, if you really, I mean, so like Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando, they usually do like a comedy house every year, right? So they've done, like, I'm thinking, so the year that we went, the first time that we went, they had that Holidays of Horror house, remember that?
Yeah.
And that was clearly supposed to be like their comedic house that year.
That's the scariest Easter Bunny I've ever seen.
Easter Bunny, the Feaster Bunny, they called
Feaster
it.
Bunny.
Fucking terrifying, but... You know, you could very easily... another example. So, the Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood a few years back did a haunted house based on... Remember that movie, This Is the End? With Seth Rogen?
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
the end of the world, and they're like all celebrities are playing themselves.
Yes. The Backstreet Boys.
And the Backstreet Boys are in there at the
yeah.
end, with Channing Tatum as their bitch, like their
Yes.
sex slave. Yeah,
Yeah.
so they did a haunted house based on that in Hollywood a few years ago, so... I think you could do it. You'd have to do it in a way that was funny, but also had a few jump scares.
Right.
I mean, they've turned Ghostbusters into a haunted house. That's a comedy, even though there's some spooky creatures in there. But I think you could do it. I think it could be done.
Yeah.
I mean, and hell, I'd walk through it. You shitting me? Of course.
Who's your MVP?
MVP. For me, it's a tough call. I almost said Guillermo here, even though I didn't have him as one of my favorite characters, because Guillermo's kind of the glue that holds the shoe. The glue that holds the shoe.
Nice.
The glue that
Nice.
holds the show together. I gotta go Nandor. I gotta go Nandor the Relentless.
You can go Nandor.
Again, he makes me laugh the hardest. His voice cracks me up. Like, so pretty much anything he says, I laugh at. His accent is fucking hysterical. I love his backstory when they constantly flash back to him talking about him ruling in the autumn, pillaging and killing.
When Nadia finds that painting.
Yes, and they find out that
never seen
Nandor
that
burned
painting.
and pillaged Nadia's village.
Yeah.
They would say, please don't pillage me.
Yeah.
And I would say to them, it's not you, I'm pillaging everyone, you included.
Yes.
Hilarious. So yeah, everything about Nandor cracks me up, and I love him.
Yeah.
The best. The MVP in my eyes. Catherine, what about you?
I gotta go with Guillermo.
Gizmo.
Gizmo.
Yeah.
Gigi.
Gigi.
Because when he's gone, everything kind of falls apart.
Yeah. The
So,
glue.
He is the glue to the shoe.
Mm-hmm. The glue to the glue of the shoe. God. Oh, God almighty.
Final thoughts.
I mean, I love this show. I kind of mentioned it already, but it's, you know, if you have Hulu, you can binge the entire thing right now if you haven't seen it.
And you will.
And
once,
you will.
Once you start it, you're not going to want to stop.
It's like 25 minutes per episode, so you can blow through it really quick. It'll keep you laughing. It's got awesome horror, nerdy references if you're a horror fan.
Great cameos.
Great cameos. Yeah, I would just say go watch What We Do in the Shadows. It's probably one of the best comedies on TV right now.
Yeah. I mean,
if not the best.
I would say I'm with you on that one. I'm not a vampire person at all, like Nosferatu, whatever, but...
Me neither.
And
Me
I
neither.
think-
And I know we talked about this on 30 Days a Night too, but like vampires are all kinds of played out right now. So you have to do something interesting for me to be a fan of it, and they do something interesting here.
Exactly.
So, sorry.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. You know, I'm not a vampire fan. I think that this... Obviously, I'm into this because it's a comedy more so than a horror series.
Yep.
And I love everything about it. I love the characters. I'm excited. They're gonna have a season 3.
Oh yeah, I think they got renewed for at least 2 more seasons. So
They
there's at
did.
least 2 more coming.
When I was reading about it, they said that they, already signed up for season 2 halfway through season 1, and then they signed up for season 3 halfway through season 2.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. This show is doing really well for FX, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it on TV for quite a while.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So
What
go on the Hulu.
Go on the Hulu and check out What We Do in the Shadows.
check out What We Do in the Shadows.
You
the
won't
TV
be disappointed.
series.
Cool. You got anything else?
I think that's it.
All right. Wow,
Yeah.
look at us. Over an hour.
Holy cow.
Not bad for 2 people doing dry January, huh?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, pretty good. Nice work.
I'm only plus 3 days though. I went a little off the way.
Just the 2
okay.
of us. Just the 2 of us.
So you want to do the social media plugs and all that?
Yeah,
stuff?
no, of course I am. Yeah, I didn't get there yet.
I'm just saying.
All right, so at this point in the episode, here's where you can find us on social media. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook. Just go on there, search for America's Hometown Horror, especially on YouTube, where you can sign up for notifications, mash that bell, and get notified every time that we release one of our episodes. And you can watch it right on YouTube. You can also tweet at us at Hometown Horror. You can find us on Instagram at Hometown Horror Pod. And you can also drop us a line via email at hometownhorrorpodcast@gmail.com. And You can also find our show pretty much anywhere you can get your podcasts, but especially Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spreaker, and many, many more. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of America's Hometown Horror. My name is Mike, and I have been joined by my esteemed co-host, the very esteemed Catherine. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Did you have a good time tonight?
I did.
Excellent. As did I. Catherine, say goodbye to your listeners, please.
Adios, muchachos.
Goodbye. You will not remember any of the contents of this podcast after you are done listening. Hey everyone, it's Mike from America's Hometown Horror, and just wanted to say thank you again for listening to another episode of our show, because of course, we would be nothing without you listeners. If you are interested in more local Plymouth podcasts, I would highly recommend you check out some shows by our cohorts on the Inebriart Podcast Network. That's right, the Inebriart Podcast Network, folks. In addition to America's Hometown Horror, you can find the Inebriart Podcast, Bar Talk, Theme Park Legends, Retro Redoctopus, and Old Colony Cast. Head on over and give them a listen.